I was trying to impress absolutely nobody. It was the first week of summer. The sun was out. People were posting photos on yachts with captions like, just another casual weekend. Meanwhile, I was driving for Uber with the air conditioning on level hope. That's when I decided I needed a boat. Not because I knew how to sail. Not because I had any practical use for one. I just wanted to say, sorry, I can't. I'm on my boat. There was one problem. Boats are expensive. So naturally, I went to the internet and sorted by price lowest first. That is how I found it. 1987 cabin cruiser, $500. Runs great. Needs minor cleaning. Whenever a seller says minor cleaning, prepare to discover a new ecosystem. But it came with a trailer, and the photos were taken at sunset. So emotionally, I was already the captain. I bought it. The seller met me at a marina. He handed me the keys and said, there's one compartment I never could get open. Then he got in his truck and left. That should have felt suspicious. Instead, I felt special. The boat was rough. The seats were cracked. The carpet was damp. And the cabin smelled like sunscreen and unresolved legal issues. But it floated. Mostly, while cleaning, I noticed a loose floor panel. I lifted it. Inside was an old brass key, a leather journal, and a weathered treasure map. I stared at the map, then laughed. Because there are only two possibilities when you find a treasure map. One, it's fake. Two, your life is about to get weird. The journal belonged to the previous owner. Most of it was normal. Weather notes, coordinates, boat repairs. Then one entry said, I found it, but I had to hide it. That was followed by GPS coordinates circled 3 times. At this point, I was too curious to act rationally. The next morning, I loaded the boat with snacks, sunscreen, and a level of confidence I had not earned. I entered the coordinates. After several hours, I arrived at a tiny uninhabited island. Which sounds glamorous until you realize there are mosquitoes the size of drones. I followed the map to a palm tree shaped like a question mark. Started digging. 10 minutes later, my shovel hit something solid. I uncovered a wooden chest. Inside were gold coins, jewelry, and enough treasure to make me briefly forget about taxes. Estimated value, $120 million. I checked the chest again to make sure it didn't say Monopoly. It did not. Naturally, I called a lawyer. He looked at the treasure and said, I'm going to need a larger briefcase. After a surprising amount of paperwork, everything was authenticated and legally mine. Apparently, buying a questionable boat is a valid investment strategy. The first thing I bought was a proper yacht. Then, a private island, and a captain's hat that made me look much more qualified than I was. I still had no idea how to tie a nautical knot. I also bought a $7,000 espresso machine. I made my first cup. Took a sip. Still tasted like burnt sadness. A month later, I returned to the original boat. It was still tied to the dock. Still smelled suspicious. Still looked like a bad decision. I sat on the deck at sunset and watched the waves. A seagull landed next to me, stole my sandwich, and flew away. Some creatures become rich and stay humble. Others become rich and steal your lunch. I sipped my coffee. Still burnt sadness. Then I looked at the little boat that changed my life and realized that for $500, it had turned out to be a pretty good deal.